click the links to join the channel here or unsubscribe. So I doubt you can hear it, but there's coyotes just howling in the background. So before I even went sailing the high seas to see this, I made some guesses if it was going to be, standard anti-white hate prawn sort of thing. You got two groups of people, and don't get me wrong, like the sets and the costumes, like a lot of the stuff looks fantastic. Atlantis, which is now like vaguely Latin American, and then you've got Wakanda, which is somewhere in Central Africa. But in cultural Marxist Hollywood, they're not going to tell the story of the, I'll say, Sunman versus the Ombrito tribes, a nod to Act Nation. They need the strawman glider to be the fall guy, and that's pretty much a done deal for the rest of Hollywood from now on, for all of Hollywood, period. You'll see it. Like, if you don't see it yet, eventually you will. And you're like, oh, that crazy person used to be on YouTube was saying all this kind of weird stuff that sounded kind of crazy. And then I started to notice, it's like, yes, that person might have been crazy, but they were right half the time. Anyway, though, of course, they were the ones who, created the stories, because ultimately these are comic book stories which are based on mythology. So it's kind of weird to see the people who created the stories treated so poorly in the film adaptations of the stories they created. It's almost as if the movies are nothing more than a vehicle to spread hate-filled propaganda. So the story was Atlantis, but I guess that was too European or Egyptian for them. So they didn't want to tell the story of Atlantis because, F the creators of the mythology, of course. But they still want the intellectual property, so they made it Spanish and not Atlantis. Feathers underwater, okay. And it's not even actually that, because I think they used mixed Spanish actors. They pretended weren't mixed with European Spanish in them. They pretended they're indigenous Mesitos, which themselves, oddly enough, if you want to go back far enough, ultimately they're still Eurasians. I think the genetic breakdown for them pre the Spanish Portuguese introduction like 600 years ago was 75% Southeast Asian and then 25% Western Europe. But ultimately they're a mix up of Eurasian people who came across the land bridge, and it's like everyone wants to seem to forget that. It's like, yeah, we're cousins in that regard. It might be distant, but anyway. So they pretended a lot of stuff with this movie, and then you kind of realize, like, the more you look at this stuff, it gets dumber and dumber. But it's really good looking dumb movie. The sets and the CGI, you can see where they spent $200 million. It looks like they spent it in the costumes alone, but the story sucks. And then, like, everywhere they have a setting, you're looking at the setting and it just clicks in your mind. Maybe because I'm so jaded with movies now. Like, they're wearing their costumes and they're fantastic, and they're seated on chairs or whatnot. And they've got, spears or whatever they have. They've got these great costumes. But then as you look at the set, you realize, like, oh, they're in a green room. Like, the whole room is green. The window with the traffic behind it or something, and everything you're looking around, it's like this ornate decorations on the walls. Like, this is all you see. It's like the making of any kind of movie, and you see like how they make the movies. She goes, that doesn't look very fun for the actors in Hollywood to just do everything talking to a screen. And now they have like 360 degree immersion screens, and it's like it would look better if you went back at building fewer sets, but actually building real sets. It's the comparison of looking at movies made 50 years ago, and the sets might have been simpler. How many times can I use Star Wars as an example? It's like, yeah, that was a real set they built. They use models on cameras, and they built bigger models to make the camera go through the smaller models to make it look like, it's like, yeah, what was the result? Oh, it looked fantastic. Like, it just blew the tits off anything you see today. Because the CGI stuff, it doesn't have weight and depth to it like the models did. And like, even 50 years later with what would have been supercomputers, computing power would have been inconceivable in 1977. But you look at it and you're like, yeah, it's amazing, but it's just not quite there. But while I, of course, didn't pay for this movie, a bunch of other people did. It did better than I expected, so credit to them for that. I think it was supposed to open Friday, but some theaters started to show it Wednesday, and then Thursday is like the pre-release. So I'm not sure if that helps or hurts, because I think that if you open it on Friday, I would think that you'd get more of a buzz behind it. Like people are going to get together and go see the movie, but I'm sure they know what they're doing. I mean, I looked up the local theater seatings, and almost everything was empty. Like in the morning, one theater was had like 6 seats. Out of an entire theater. And then I looked up a theater like at 8 o'clock showing that morning. The whole thing was empty, so that doesn't bode well. But there was a lot of show times. I mean, because theaters are just getting smaller and smaller. So I'm not sure about that like pre-release. I think it kind of sucks the energy out of the thing. I don't think they did that like back in the day. I think they wanted to save up all the energy to get people pumped for a movie, and as well they should. So the opening seems good, but I think it's going to be like Black Adam, where it drops off quickly, and now they're in a position of looking at it, and they don't think it's going to make money, or it might just. But it's like the opening was really big, and it's like, yeah, it just didn't. There was nothing to sustain it. So Black Adam, even with The Rock in it, he did a fine job, is probably going to lose money. He does good, but it's like there's just too many little woke bits in the movie that if you just got rid of those little, like the lecturing the audience, all you had to do is just cut that lecture out. Like, we don't want to be lectured to by the people who have applauded Weinstein for years. It's like, I will never get that out of my head, because you look at it and you go like, oh yeah, these are the worst people on earth, and they have lectured us for the past 20 years or 15 years when the mask started to come off, and you go like, didn't you guys literally cheer Weinstein? You said like y'all knew what was going on with that. Oh yeah, that's right. Hey, look, shiny object. Let's just you know get off. Anyway, stuff like having the English as the antagonists, like in everything they possibly do. It's just, it feels like propaganda. It's because it is propaganda, and my tolerance for woke is zero. Maybe I'm a little further along the rabbit hole, but like if you're listening to this and you listen to these kind of videos, you will be where I am now. There's nowhere. Oh, that'll never happen. Yeah, yes, it will. So I'm taking notes as I'm watching this Wakanda thing. Now, there's no way that this has rewatchability. It doesn't have legs. The problem is it's a bunch of women running around on a CGI set for 2 hours. The viewer wonders why women are playing the roles of men. The skinny woman is not as strong as the man, so she drinks the berry juice and she gets strong. But wouldn't it just have been better if the big strong guy, who's, I don't know what he's playing kind of a shitlord in the movie. He's dressed in furs, and they run around making primate sounds, and it's like that's their mating call or something. It's like, but the guy is 6'2" and 300 pounds or something. It's like, oh, you should just give him the berry juice, because he's already. I mean, he might not have the judgment for it. I get that, but he's already a big strong dude. He looks like playing in the NFL or something. It's like, no, we're gonna give it to this girl who's 5'6" and 145 pounds. Like, okay, I'm sure she's very fit. Whoever, I forget her name already, but the dude who's kind of the I don't know, he's kind of the clownish character. It's like, yeah, he's 6'2". You probably would be better off. And there's no like, you're in Africa. There's no shortage of physically fit male dudes to give the berry juice to. Like, no, we're gonna give it to the smart one. It's like, well, she's of a fertile age, and like her thing is her brain, so she's got this big brain power. So you really kind of want to use people where they're best suited. Like this big strong guy doesn't have that kind of brain power. She does have the brain power, and she's a to be fair, walking uterus if during that fertile time period. It's like, really, wouldn't she be better spent finding the smartest guy she could and then having kids to carry out those genetics? Oh, well, that's like patriarchy or something. It's like, it's just realistic. Anyway, so that, I mean, there's little logical flaws like that, but then you notice like, oh, those are kind of big logical flaws, and there seems to be a lot of them to bypass. To like, we're gonna make this tiny little petite girl to be the warrior, and then have other bunch of women warriors. Like, none of that makes sense. But men are evil, even the Sun Man. So 120-pound Letitia Wright gets to run around beating up 250-pound Mexican dudes. It's like, I guess it made sense on paper when they're writing this stuff. Like, yeah, this is exactly what people want to see: violence against women. The movie has got a lot of colorful CGI, and it's got awesome looking costumes, and the costumes are really next level. But the thing is, it's derivative plastic F doll America, kind of Pete Weimar. The comic book is derivative from original mythology, but this end product is nothing more than like MTV level subversion and corruption. It's okay to just say that women are not good in certain roles. It's not sexist. Remember, like you can just, I don't know, just say that stuff doesn't really exist and leave them. Yeah, but it does exist. I feel it exists. I feel it doesn't exist. I think it's just Bolshevik propaganda used to compel you through fear. So too much girl power on screen is somehow annoying. You can love women, and I definitely do, but I'm just kind of saying what everyone is too politically correct to say. People want to see women in certain roles: cute, sexy, subservient, or occasionally they can pull off a what was that movie, Alien and Aliens. She pulled it off because she wasn't a purse puppy. There were a couple of specific scenes where people had to show her how to do things. Other people had to help her along the way, and she was forced into the role. It's like, and yes, of course, every main character is probably going to be a purse puppy. But they do that with the old Star Wars and new Star Wars, and they're trying to say like, Luke's purse puppy too. And then you look at the little scenes in the original movies that they carefully laid out to lay the foundation for why Luke was able to do this stuff. And then you look at the Disney Star Wars in 2015. You go, yeah, you didn't do that. You just skipped over these like a 30-second line about the guy. That's why they put that line in the movie about whomping swamp rats in his T16 in some Devil's Canyon or something. It's like that was just a 10-second line, and it's like, oh yeah, that's why they put that line in there, because it explains like, oh, he might have had some kind of Jedi intuition, inner thing back then. And there's a couple other lines they do that in the movie. I mean, the more you go back and look at old movies, you realize like, oh god, they tried back then, and they weren't written by 28-year-old Tumblr cat lady girls, which is what everything is basically written now. It's like, you think I'm kidding, and then you look at the people who are sitting at the table at these rooms, and it's like, oh, it's a bunch of women on a Macintosh. So a lot of this stuff didn't make sense. I mean, as you break it down, there's kind of a lot of layers of stupidity. The whole movie overall, of course, but the girl power purse puppy Mary Sue stuff, that gets old really quickly, because when you don't have European characters, they have to be perfect, which is boring. They have to be finished characters, concluded characters. There's no redemption arc for them because they've already arrived. They're already as good as they can get. And these very two-dimensional characters, after a little bit in the movie or after watching a few movies like this, you go, oh, this is not storytelling like it used to be, the hero's journey sort of thing. Anyway, so only European characters can be multifaceted and interesting, which is awesome and ridiculous all at the same time. When they hate us, but they inadvertently make us the best characters in the show, because you're allowed to have depth to you. And you look at all these other like plastic two-dimensional characters, like, yeah, you're not doing them any favors by treating them like Mary Sue's. Now, here's the weird thing. This, in my humble opinion, is a better movie than the first one. And I don't think anyone is going to agree with me on the left or the right. I've heard both. Everyone that has come out of this, I think, has said it was not a very good movie. Left and right, I've heard that from people saying it's kind of flat. It had more detail. It had more depth in the first movie. Namor, which is what I forget the movie. What was it? Was it backwards in the movie to? No, what am I thinking of? I'm thinking of like Tobar and Robot. It's robot spelled backwards. Roman, is that backwards? Rome, man. There's a reason for it in the comic book. I don't remember though. Like none of that makes sense to swap all this kind of stuff. But he actually does make the movie way, way more interesting than the original one. The original one was like, yes, this is a better movie because this does have it's more complicated, it's less surface level. And here's the thing, it's like I just got done 10 minutes of making fun of women. The women actually make this movie better than the first one in a different way. So it's like it is a good sequel because you took something that was a masculine energy, kind of a CGI smash, like a Hulk type of smash punch movie, and with the addition of women, you're able to dial that back. So they did do a lot of things well. And the thing is, the movie is almost it almost could have been a good movie, but there's a couple of little scenes. There's a couple of scenes that take you out of it instantly that just make you ask questions, and you start scratching and asking for the questions. There's a line at the end of the movie about the colonizers are in chains, and the actor plays a role is either English or Irish or something, I'm guessing. And then I don't know what he's supposed to be, the character in the movie, but you start thinking about that line, you're like, but this guy didn't colonize anyone. It's like, oh, it's just a saying. It's just a saying. It's like, yeah, but it's derogatory. It's dehumanizing. It's insulting. This guy didn't colonize anyone. You go, oh, but people who look like him who came from the same continent did. And he's like, wait a minute, that's not acceptable. It why is it acceptable for you to say something so dehumanizing to someone who bears no guilt for any of it? It's like, these aren't, if this was the 80s you dismiss it, but like because of the culture war you realize like, yeah, that means something. That's meant to degrade and dehumanize someone, and it just sticks in my mind. Like I look at this guy, goes like, he didn't do anything. This guy's, the actor's 50, 60 years old, whatever. It's like, this guy didn't do anything. Oh, we meant his people. Well, I mean, so wait, you're trying to blame him for something that other people did? How would you feel if he turned it around on you? It's like, if this movie was 30 years ago, you wouldn't even think that way. It would just be like a funny one liner. But you start thinking about, like, things are different now. You're thinking about things. You're thinking in a very tribal way, or at least I am. And the other part of that was like, well, what about the Barbary slave trade? Who do you think controlled that one? It's like that one group of people, that colonizing group, that was the greatest colonizing force on earth. Much more so than Europeans or Catholics. It was actually that other group, the Barbary slave trade, which is hysterical because I mean it's kind of in the people's minds because of the Woman King and the insane interpretation of the Woman King, because they were also involved in the trading of people without payment who looked remarkably like them. So like every time they say it, like I'm glad they say stuff like this, like calling these European actors colonizers, and because it starts you down a path and go, wait a minute, actually the true history of slavery is actually something different. Like, you guys actually take most of the blame on that. It's like, oh, how dare you say that? It's like, you opened up this line of questioning for cross-examination. What did you expect? That they would not be able to rebut the evidence offered? That you're throwing stones from a glass house. And it's like, it sticks in people's minds, and we have this opportunity to use these social media to make these videos and get people to start thinking about it. It's like, yeah, every time they call you that, they're degrading and dehumanizing you, and they just turn around on them. It's like, the only reason they put that in there is like, how do I say this for YouTube? There's useful idiots. This Hollywood movie is a bunch of useful idiots who don't think they're useful idiots. And they're puppets on the end of a string. Shit, I'm just gonna leave it at that. I mean, look at the, oh, there goes the screen. Look at the end of the movie, the credits. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, join the channel here. Thanks for everyone who's very recent generous donations towards that tech fund or on Subscribe Star. And we'll see you guys all next episode.